to Essentially You and Friends. This special edition podcast is where I have the opportunity to sit down and interview people somewhere along their journey of figuring out how to rock their work so that they can love their life. Vincent van Gogh said, "What is done in love is done well." And in this episode, I'm interviewing my daughter, Marissa Mathia, in her quest to become a professional pianist. Welcome to the show. Welcome everyone to Essentially You and Friends. My name is Mark Mathia, and I have the special privilege of being here with my daughter, Marissa Mathia. Marissa, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You are the first guinea pig to sit on this microphone with me, and I appreciate you. Thanks for that. Marissa, you've had an incredible journey since you were knee-high to a grasshopper, which seems like yesterday, but was many years ago. And this journey that you've been on has been quite exceptional in terms of wanting to be a musician. What inspired you to become a musician?
I think it was just something that was consistent throughout my entire life since I was young, and that I kind of just fell in love with, and it was something that always challenged me, and I knew it never really grew bored of. So I think what inspired me was just being surrounded by music from a really young age.
Neat. So tell us about what you're pursuing. What's your focus in music now? Where are you at in your journey? And why is it important to you?
Well, right now I'm studying at the University of Oklahoma for my master's in music for piano performance and pedagogy. So I'm working on a degree that focuses on performing, but actually probably a little more so on the pedagogy, the learning how to teach. I thought that it was really important to spend some time learning how to teach well and pursuing that a little bit, because my undergrad degree was just in performance, so I didn't get a full degree of learning how to teach. And as a musician, I think it's really important to be good at teaching if you are going to do that at all in your life, and know how to really set a good foundation for your students of a technique, of musicality, phrasing, so that they're really set up for success and you're not harming their technique in any way.
That's interesting. And talking about being set up for success, let's talk about your strengths. What are your Clifton Strengths top 5?
My top 5, so I have positivity, I have adaptability, I have includer, developer, and maximizer.
And how do those show up in your day-to-day as you're going through pursuing your master's and teaching piano?
I think it's really special. This is something really special about the entire pedagogy program at OU, is that I feel like a lot of people have very positive personalities and outlooks on life, and our professors kind of handpicked people that would mesh really well with the program. So I think the positivity shows up a lot in my day-to-day in teaching and trying to be encouraging to my students, and then being supportive of my friends and having a positive outlook on what we're doing and how hard we're working. Let's see. Adaptability. There's so many things that get thrown at you in grad school that you just have to really go with the flow in some sense and do your absolute best to stay organized, but at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of little things that pop up. Includer. I think this is another thing that a lot of the students at OU have in common, is that we like to include each other. We work together really well, and even in our classes we'll study together and things. Let's see. Developer and maximizer, I think it really comes to play in my teaching. I really love seeing people develop and grow. That's been really exciting, and taking them from good to great, I think, is where the maximizer really comes in.
Yeah, that's a key characteristic of a maximizer. Well, that's awesome. It sounds like you get to use your strengths every day. at this point in your journey, and that
Yeah.
inspires me a lot. Hey, when it comes to classical music, what's your favorite piece? Maybe
Hmm.
your favorite composer or your favorite piece, either one.
Um, I have so many favorites up to this point, but one that I've loved for a really, really long time is Schubert's Fantasy, the four-hand Fantasy in D, I believe. And I love the journey that Schubert really takes you on from beginning to end, and it's just very, very heartfelt and emotional, which I love pieces that I can connect with emotionally.
Well, that's interesting because my next question is how do you do that? When you perform a great piece of music, how do you connect with your audience, and is that even important?
I think so. I think it's almost a collaboration between you and the audience. It's this special kind of headspace that everybody kind of joins in together when you're performing. And being a part of that is quite special. I like the feeling of being up on stage and getting to share with people who love music as much as I do.
Well, that's interesting because you're not a typical performer. You're more of an introvert than an extrovert.
Mhm. I think it's a specific. It doesn't always feel like the audience is is right there. Sometimes it feels like you're in this kind of. I know a lot of people use the flow as a term for this. So you're in that specific flow state where it's really, really focused. Um, and if you're doing it right, you're able to really focus on the music and making things as beautiful as you can.
Oh, that's great. And that flow state is very important, whether we're in the office or apparently on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really interesting that you find flow and that helps you overcome maybe some of the external shyness or whatever introverts
Mm-hmm.
carry around with you. I understand that. Hey, let's talk about this and shift gears a little bit because I want to talk about achievements and I want to talk about failures because I think a lot of times people don't give enough credit to both, right? We don't
Mm-hmm.
spend enough time saying, hey, I did this really well. And then when we fail poorly. And that doesn't do us any good. So can you give us a time and maybe let us in on what was some of or one of your most meaningful achievements?
Let's see. I would say the one that stands out to me the most is probably the duo piano performance I got to be a part of with an orchestra. My duo partner at the time, Imong Shu, and we played with our orchestra at the University of Omaha, Nebraska at Omaha, and we played with the orchestra, the Poulenc. It's a two piano concerto, the first movement, and I've never really felt more alive on the stage than it's a giant collaboration when you're playing with an orchestra, but you still kind of are that center focus, which I really enjoy. But that one really stood out to me.
That was beautiful, and I was fortunate enough to be in the audience. Marissa, when it comes to things in your educational journey in college, that what was one of the most significant failures you had to push through?
I think there's one performance that really stood out to me. It was in a master class, and I had attempted to memorize a Bach fugue rather quickly, and as many people who have studied Bach know, it's really hard to cram Bach, and and actually that was probably my most significant failure. Was that performance did not go well, and I was very upset with myself afterwards. But I did learn from that. I learned that you can't cram Bach, and if you don't practice him pretty much every day, he'll bite you in the butt.
Okay, good. So you went right away to how you pushed through it. How
Mhm.
important is resilience as a musician?
I think if you're not resilient, you shouldn't be in the career path of music. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs when it comes to a musical journey. You're going to want to see a very linear path of growth, but that's not really the case. Growth when it comes to music is not linear. It's maybe more of a stair-step effect where you maybe have some plateaus where you're really pushing, and then all of a sudden you're going to see that growth. But it's not going to be, from your perspective, that linear line of growth.
Yeah, that's good advice. So speaking of that, as someone who wants to or aspires to be a classical musician, and let's go beyond that, let's just say a leader, anyone in the workforce, what advice would you give them when it comes to pursuing a dream?
My advice would be your best is always enough. I think it's really important that you're always trying your absolute best, putting in the preparation to the best of your abilities, spending the time with it. But then at the end of the day, when you get to the performance, when you get to that big presentation or whatever, if you do your absolute best, it's always going to be enough. And the right doors will always open for you. I found that in my path a lot, that it wasn't always exactly what I thought it was going to be, but I kind of set my course on what I thought was best for me, and then I just really went for it, and the right doors opened up, and I ended up where I needed to be.
You've always had an inner drive. It almost looks like competition. I don't think competition is high, but you find yourself in those things and really driven. But there's another side of that, and there's another side to your maximizer, and that can kind of look like perfectionism. So as a musician and someone who's a maximizer, someone who tends to maybe call us once or twice a month in tears because something didn't go well, what advice would you give someone in dealing with a perfectionistic nature?
Oh boy. I think sometimes it can be a good thing. I think it keeps you humble in a sense where you're not like thinking you're the best. And it's really hard when you get into the mindset of that egotistical mindset a little bit. And it's not really healthy for musicians to be there because it kind of stunts your growth a little bit. So in a sense, it's a good thing. But it's also quite difficult when you want everything to be perfect. Which is why I always say your best is always enough. Like I mentioned before, I think if you have the mindset of putting your best foot forward, and whatever it looks like on that day, and trying to be happy with that, is really important.
That's good advice. That's great that you've learned this early in your career. It's going to stay with you, I bet. So let's talk about, as we're moving into your musical journey, what's next after you graduate with your master's at Oklahoma University?
More music, for sure. I think I've been thinking about whether I want to go straight into a doctoral degree or go for maybe an artist diploma where I'd get to spend a lot of time just really working on music and learning new repertoire. So more music, more education at this point, and I'm hoping at the end of the day to become a professor. I would love to have the opportunity to teach at a university. I love teaching the college-age students. I've gotten some opportunities during this degree currently to be teaching college-age students, and I've loved it so far. That's probably my preferred age to teach, and then I would love to continue performing through that. I know a lot of professors spend quite a bit of time performing and putting together recitals and collaborative recitals as well. So that would be really exciting for me.
That sounds great. Well, Marissa, you are an uncommon daughter and young artist with an uncommon pursuit of music. And your work ethic and your passion for what you're pursuing, I admire a lot. Well done.
Thanks,
Well done.
Dad.
Yeah. But it's been really fun to talk to you, and you know, I don't know that we could end a podcast until we just say, Marissa, when you think back in your musical journey from the very beginning through today, who are some of the influencers in your life that had a real positive impact on your journey?
We better take this chronologically.
Let's do it.
I'd have to start with my mom, who started me on piano, and she was the one who taught me to play from 3.5, which is quite young to try to teach a 3.5-year-old, probably pretty wiggly at that point. But she stuck with it. She taught me how to play. And then moving forward at the age of 8, I kind of switched over to Kenso, who is a local teacher in Omaha, who taught me how to tell a story through music and how to really express myself through music, which I really appreciate that he let me do that and grow in that way. Moving forward, Dr. Washington Garcia, my first undergrad professor, he really showed me what it was like to be a professional in this career path and how to build relationships and make connections, which is super important when it comes to being a musician. Let's see, moving forward. During that same time, we have Stacy Hainline, was my collaborative professor, and she was one of my biggest cheerleaders at the time. She really showed me how a lot of technical skills that I needed to grow on with, and she gave that to me, and she helped me learn how to collaborate with people and worked with my duo partner at the time and got us to be able to perform with an orchestra, which is really amazing. But she also taught me how to be resilient, how to be strong as a woman in a career, and just how hard I needed to work to succeed. Moving forward, my current professors, Dr. Barbara Fast, she's been amazing in teaching a lot of that pedagogy, as well as Dr. Murphy, J.P. Murphy. He's been amazing as well. I've really enjoyed the classes, learning how to teach and become a better teacher. And then my piano professor right now, Dr. Igor Lipinski, it's been wonderful being able to explore music with him and his excellent ear. And he really treats me like I'm my own independent artist, which I really, really appreciate. And I'm excited to see where that takes us in the future.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's always impressive when our journeys, when we just take a moment and reflect on it, just how many people have added little contributions to where we're at today. Well, Marissa, thanks for sharing. I know that as people listen to this podcast, they're going to get a lot out of it. They're going to understand that the journey is real. It's hard. There's wins and losses, and we all have our little things we have to push through. But at the end of the day, there's people that we're grateful for, and it's about making a connection, isn't it?
Yep, it really is.
And your connection with your audience has always been something, as your dad, that I've liked to watch. And I understand it better now, having talked to you about how you make that connection and kind of bring the audience and yourself into the same world for some shared space and grace at that same time.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thought. Well, Marissa, thanks so much for joining me. And to everyone out there, thank you for joining us. It's been a privilege to interview my daughter. And Marissa, best of luck to you on your continued journey in music.
Thank you.
And now it's your turn to get out there and rock your work so that you can love your life. Not every job is going to be your dream job. I get that. But if you use your strengths every day and you know your stuff, the sky is the limit. If you like what you've learned, would you consider subscribing to my iTunes podcast and leaving a review? I'd sure appreciate it. And until we talk again, know this, I'm cheering for you.